I want you to watch these two clips of Ayaan Hirsi Ali educating students on anti-Semitism and Islamism. Check it out.
That dirtier word is often replaced with anti-Zionism or Holocaust denial. And so should we assume that this is another trend, maybe like BLM, and not wait until the mainstream forgets anti-Semitism, or should we see this as a more permanent thing, and how do we respond?
That's a great question. And let me start with how you end by saying, please do not think that this is another fad that will pass. I think it would be a lethal mistake for all of us to do it, and especially for Jewish communities. It's not going to pass, number one. Number two, I understand and I listen and follow intensely conversations within Jewish communities where they say, well, at least now, as opposed to the 1930s, we have a home and we can go to Israel. And I think that that is A, giving up, and B, if you look at the scale and the scope and the intensity of the hatred that the Islamists have created, and not just Islamists, it used to be Muslim governments. The only difference is Islamists drive their followers to act, whereas the Muslim governments propagated the anti-Jewish propaganda in order to create, to keep their populations apathetic. But the intensity, the scale, and the scope of this hatred is something that you cannot underestimate. And it has shifted, as I said, it's imported now. It's no longer constrained to the Muslim countries of the past. It's here in America. It's all over the West. And it has resuscitated and given permission to the other anti-Semitisms, the European anti-Semitism, but don't forget the Soviet anti-Semitism. It's given permission to all of these anti-Semitisms to come back. And so I think now is the moment. It's one of the most serious, if not the most serious, problems that we are seeing. If we want to prevent another Holocaust from happening, we should not treat this as a fad. We should take it very, very seriously.
Thank you.
I have a very basic question, I think. Basically, what do we do about it? You alluded to it a little bit as far as like we need to do something different.
Yes.
But also you mentioned that kind of, it seems that what converted you was Holocaust education, or like seeing what the problems are kind of firsthand with anti-Semitism, the problems with anti-Semitism. And that seems like what the old approach was. So why isn't that effective, and what should we be doing?
If we reassess the old approach, we're going to find that there were things that actually worked. The mandatory education on the lead up to the Holocaust and how populations became complicit. In my classroom, some of my professors said what we did to the Jews wasn't just to annihilate them or to hurt them or to send them to camps. He said it debased us as human beings. It put us in a moral crisis of our own. And he was talking about all of Europe. I think in that sense, by reassessing it, we have to go back to say, who are we? What is our identity? Are we people who will repeat that one more time? Even if it happens in the name of Islam? No. So I think reassess what we did right, and then now look at what we have done and some of the effects and how it hasn't been helpful. I think part of these, say, cultural pluralism and multiculturalism, etc., these were philosophies that were actually developed in some ways to accommodate the differentness of like how Jews are distinct, so that they can, as a minority group, they can keep their rituals and their identity and still be a part of the wider society. And these philosophies were also applied to the Native Americans, maybe to a certain extent Black Americans, because multiculturalism comes with exemptions, and it comes with exceptions for the law and affirmative action and a whole constellation of things that at one time, before globalization, before mass immigration, before the challenge of Islamism, these things sounded and seemed to be good and effective and inclusive. That's not the case anymore. So we've got to throw that out. We've got to start understanding that now we can form alliances with the individuals, the organizations, even the nations that are alienated and are targeted by the Islamists. In Europe, for instance, it's the white working class that is hard-pressed by the upsurge in immigration, but also through Islamism. It's their neighborhoods, their schools, their social welfare benefits. These are large communities that are resisting that. And when they resist this, they're called far right, they're called racist, they're called extremist. They're not. They're responding to the changes that are occurring in the same way that, say, some of the Jewish neighborhoods are responding. They're appalled, and anything they say, they're told they're Islamophobes. So I think part of it is reassessing that aspect of minority protection and understanding that the Islamists are abusing these kindnesses. This is why I said we only focus on terrorism and fighting terrorism, but terror is a tactic, and it's only one of many tactics of subversive warfare. And I think we should look at the real subversion, the language they use, the indoctrination, etc. So we have to wise up. We are behind them. They're using abuse of propaganda, the development of the concept of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is presented as if it is exactly the same thing as anti-Semitism. We know the history of anti-Semitism in Europe that led to the Holocaust, but there's never been a Holocaust against Muslims. Islam is not an ethnicity. It is not, Muslims are made up of, they say 1.5 to 1.8 billion. And in fact, in some ways, they are a majority. And if you want to play with the numbers, in Europe, for every one Jew, there are 36 Muslims. So who's the minority here? And in the US, we're not that far behind. Right now, in the US, Jewish populations are more official, according to the official numbers, than Muslim numbers. But these numbers are changing because of more immigration, because of the birth rates that are asymmetrical. So I think we've got to wise up, and we've got to, and here's why it's so important to recapture these schools, the institutions of education, UATX, where I can come and give this talk. I can't give this talk in any other university in the United States without having people protest. And threaten. And finally, the final thing I want to say is, let's also consider the message. So we've been talking a lot about the medium, but the message of the Islamists, if you dig deep into it, it's a message of death. They shout, we believe in death and you believe in life. So when you look at what Israel is fighting for, what the Jews are fighting for, it is life. And that message of life, that should be easier to sell even to Muslims than they are. But we're not competing, because they applied the propaganda that if we dissect what they're saying and we share that with the larger public, we're committing Islamophobia. So we're engaged in self-censorship. And we've got to get rid of all of that.
Could I just ask a quick follow-up? So it seems that much of what you're saying is that multiculturalism is not working anymore. We need to not do that. But if we got rid of multiculturalism, where would the Jews be? Like, how would that work? And perhaps the answer is that it's multiculturalism for everyone except the Islamists, but that also doesn't sit quite right.
The condemnation of nationalism, when we were reckoning with the lead up to the Holocaust. And
what is he trying to say? Multiculturalism without the Islamists is a great idea. Multiculturalism without the jihadists is a great idea. Like, yeah, that's exactly the solution.
Reflecting on that time, there was that German nationalism of blood and soil, and the Jews were accused of racial impurity. That ethno-nationalism is bad and wrong, and we must continue to condemn that. But that can't be the only aspects of nationalism. There are very positive nationalisms where we have a constitution and the rule of law, and we are all equal before the rule of law, no exceptions, no exemptions. In the United Kingdom now, there is a sentencing committee that is determined to have crime, the exact same crime committed by different individuals. If you're of an ethnic minority, you're going to get leniency. But if you are a white heterosexual male, you're going to get the full extent of that punishment. That is taking a wrecking ball to the system, to the nation state. So what unifies us, what makes me an American? I love America. It's the Constitution. It's what I have in common with you. So I'll say, let's end multiculturalism, let's end diversity and all of that nonsense and insist on our unity as human beings as first, and the constitutions and laws that protect that.
So just to clarify, that would be like allowing Jewish culture to exist, but not using like DEI to raise it above other cultures, and not using DEI to raise any one culture above others, like we're currently doing to some extent.
I think what I'm trying to say is we are multi-ethnic, and we've got multiple identities, but our national identity is one, and it must be one, and it must be treated as one if it is to work. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all these cosmetic, artificial instruments, if you read the literature and the philosophies out of which they come, these are subversive efforts to dismantle the West and Western structures. We have a merit-based system. And if I just got offered an amazing job, I read through all of the points and I want it, but I came to the conclusion, I can't do it. I don't have the skill set. But I could get it if I only insisted I was Black and I was woman and I was this and I was that. That's a DEI. And if you eliminate meritocracy, then what makes this society different from all the other corrupt societies where people get to the top because of who they're related to and who they know and who their blood ties are with? And a society that decides to go down that path of giving positions of power and privilege and so on according to identity, that's a society that's going to not last for long. We wouldn't be able to compete with China. We wouldn't be able to compete with other countries, I'm afraid. So I think maybe we should say, let's learn from Israel. Israel as a nation state, I think it was Dan Senor who wrote that book, Startup Nation. That startup nation is flourishing. I was impressed. I was there last week on Tuesday, and I was impressed by, it was nearly midnight when I came from the airport, and there were young women walking the streets, alone, sometimes in pairs, sometimes more, almost at midnight in Jerusalem. And I remarked on it. I asked the driver, how is that possible? And he said, in Israel, women can walk the streets any time of night or day unaccompanied. They have nothing to fear. That is a nation state that honors the social contract between those who govern and those who are governed, because the most important function of a government is to keep her citizens safe. And now in Europe and in America, sadly, girls are not safe. And Jews, I just told you, I mean, they're saying there's this impending doom. Our Jewish fellow citizens don't feel safe. That social contract is broken, and we better repair it quickly.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to say I loved your jacket. And I also wanted to ask,
Thank you.
are there any lessons from your recent conversion to Christianity that might be applied?
It was
All right. She made some brilliant. Ayaan Hirsi Ali making some brilliant points as always. And again, I think that she is basically just saying, treat people as they deserve. Ayaan Hirsi Ali making some brilliant points once again, and she's saying basically treat people as individuals. This is meritocracy. This is normal. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. You can also go to our channel memberships page and join there as well. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.